Okay, video number 2 this week. We're in chapter 9 in the textbook, which is Family Album Part 2, Medieval and Renaissance Theater. Now, from the Greeks, we move on to the world of the Romans, because obviously the world powers are changing, and with them the culture changes, and so entertainment changes. And Greek theater, which was a pretty, to be an actor, was a pretty well thought of occupation, and of course the Greeks were extremely interested in thought, language, philosophy. We transfer over to the Romans. Now, the theater in the Roman world is kind of where we get the idea of throwing tomatoes at the stage. It's a raucous body. Wouldn't play well in the Christian South of America in 2022 sort of theatrical experience, and actors are not necessarily well thought of. There's a few playwrights that you need to know about, which are on page 69 in the textbook in chapter 9. Plautus. Plautus wrote comedies. And Shakespeare would borrow heavily from Plautus, and so Plautus kind of lives on. Terence lived and wrote after. He's number 2. He comes after Plautus. He's a little higher level of comedy, not quite so much Three Stooges bonking you on the head sort of stuff. And then there was a Roman writer named Seneca, who's the primary author of the tragedies that we know about. And so make sure you know those 3 for our next quiz, Plautus, Terence, and Seneca. Now, the Romans bring something in that I want to touch on here. I'm going to really dwell on it when we get down to Commedia dell'arte in a couple weeks, but I want to introduce the idea. On page 70, it says the stock characters are those who remain the same in many different plays. Here's what I want to say about that. And the stock characters disappear for a while and come right back in Commedia dell'arte about 1,500 years later. And we have a situation where so if you take a nutty professor, okay? Fred MacMurray's played that. Eddie Murphy's played that. Robin Williams in Flubber played kind of a nutty professor. A nutty professor can be any nationality, any sex, anything. That's a stock character. Guy wears a pocket protector and is nerdy and looks a little bit like Mr. Rogers. But it could be Mrs. Rogers. It doesn't matter. They are not ethnic stereotypes, such as Aunt Jemima. Aunt Jemima is a ethnic stereotype and completely different. They are unrelated to one another. And I want to make sure we start to talk about this and get past the difference between a stock character and an ethnic stereotype. Not the same thing. Romans used stock characters. It's easy to come up with a new script. Hallmark, right? Change the occupation, change the small town, same script, stock character, okay? 313 AD, Council of Nicaea. Christianity becomes the authorized religion of the Roman world, and for the next 1,200 years, Christianity will rule the roost in terms of what can be used as entertainment. And we're going to talk more about that. I'm going to show you a little movie about it. But you'll notice a very important diagram here on page 71 in your textbook. You'll see the choir loft and the altar. And the bottom left, you're going to see something called the hell mouth, or it was sometimes called the mouth of hell. And so basically what was allowed to happen during this 1,000 years or so of theater is that the church allowed you to do mystery plays, which were stories from the Bible, miracle plays, which were stories of saints. Remember, we're talking about the Catholic Church here. And morality plays, which would be allegories that taught spiritual truth. And that was it. And when you did these morality plays, or anywhere that even if it was a Bible story, if it was about the conversion of Paul, that all happens at the mouth of hell, the hell mouth. There's this opportunity for these characters to make a turnaround, a repentant story, and they do that there. And students don't usually believe me that within these large cathedrals that there was a place literally called the mouth of hell, and that's where the theatrical world centered around for 1,000 years or so. A little bit later, we added a fourth type of play, which was a passion play. And that's a play that is specifically centered on the life of Christ. If you go to Northwest Arkansas, to Eureka Springs, you can see a passion play up there, and the dove flies in. And you can go to that today. This stuff is still in existence. But for 1,000 years or more, the church had an absolute stranglehold on what you could watch. In many ways, similar things happen today. The church has at multiple times gotten very angry at Disney and boycotted them and their films for weak moral stances, or including a gay character or whatever it might be. Maybe not quite as intense today, but still, I think there is a sense that certain things are not allowable. We have contemporary Christian music, which is produced on contemporary Christian labels. We have Christian movies, which are produced by Christian movie companies, etc. And so my question is, who gets to tell you what you can watch? I mean, I think there's obviously a question of, should a small child see violence, or should a small child see sex, or should a small... I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about where you're at now in your life. Who gets to choose what you watch? And what are the dangers one way or the other, in your opinion? We are in an age where a lot of books are being banned. I'm going to tell you, I think that's dangerous. I think a society that doesn't understand where they've been is possibly doomed to repeat their own history. And so let's consider that this week as we start. Next week, we're going to talk about a specific set of plays called the Wakefield Mystery Plays. But for right now, let's just kind of wrap our heads around who gets to decide what we see, who should be in charge of that, what is good and bad about that. All right, have a good weekend. I'll see you next week.